The concentrated fire of 35 alien warships turned the Indomitable's bridge section into an inferno. Captain Vasquez felt the deck buckle beneath her feet as superheated plasma melted through armor that had protected her ship for 2 centuries. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut as atmosphere vented into space, and the screaming of damaged metal filled the air. "Bridge to engineering," Elena called over the intercom, but only static answered. The communication lines had been severed along with everything else. Around her, half the bridge crew lay unconscious or worse, their stations destroyed by cascading system failures. "Rodriguez," she called to her executive officer, who was trying to stop blood flowing from a deep gash in his arm. "Can you still pilot this ship?" "Manual controls are responding, Captain," he replied through gritted teeth. "But we've lost main navigation and most of our sensors." Elena looked at the tactical display, which flickered with damaged data feeds. The Indomitable was dying, her hull breached in dozens of places, her weapons nearly exhausted. But the ship still had one thing left: momentum. And sometimes momentum was all you needed. "Plot a course for the moon," Elena ordered. Rodriguez looked at her in confusion. "Captain, the moon is barely more than a large asteroid. There's nothing there but mining operations." "Exactly." Elena's eyes were fixed on the tactical display, where the small moon of Kepler 442b showed as a gray dot among the orbital mechanics data. "Brooks, how much ammunition do we have left?" 12 tungsten penetrators and maybe 50 steel core rounds, the communications officer replied, his voice weak from blood loss. "And how much explosives do we carry for mining operations?" Understanding dawned on Rodriguez's face. "Captain, that's insane. The blast could kill us all." "We're dead anyway," Elena pointed out, "but this way we take them with us." The Indomitable turned toward the small moon with the last of her maneuvering power. The alien fleet followed, their weapons continuing to pound the human ship's dying hull. Admiral Kethmore watched the tactical display with growing confusion as the human vessel changed course away from both the planet and his fleet. "Where are they going?" Sub-Commander Yathara asked. "Perhaps they're trying to ram us," suggested the tactical officer, "though at their current speed we could easily avoid them." Kethmore studied the human ship's trajectory more carefully. They weren't heading for his fleet. They were heading for the small moon that orbited the main planet. What possible tactical advantage could they gain there? "Sir," the science officer reported, "the human vessel is charging its remaining weapons, but they're not targeting our ships." On the Indomitable's bridge, Elena watched the moon grow larger on the main screen. The small celestial body was barely 300 kilometers in diameter, held together by little more than gravity and wishful thinking. It had been mined extensively by the human colonists, and its surface was riddled with tunnels and excavations. "All remaining weapons, target the moon's north polar region," Elena ordered. "Maximum yield, concentrated fire pattern." The Indomitable's final broadside launched toward the moon with desperate precision. 12 tungsten penetrators struck the lunar surface in a tight cluster, their relativistic impact sending shock waves deep into the moon's core. The steel core rounds followed, punching through already weakened rock and triggering the mining explosives that the colonists had left behind. The small moon came apart like a fragile egg hit by a hammer. Centuries of mining had weakened its internal structure, and the Indomitable's bombardment provided the final stress that shattered it completely. What had been a solid celestial body became a cloud of debris ranging from mountain-sized chunks to deadly gravel. "By the void," Admiral Kethmore whispered as he watched the moon disintegrate. "They're insane." The debris cloud began spreading according to orbital mechanics, following the moon's original trajectory around the planet. And directly in the path of that expanding field of destruction sat 35 Zephyrian warships. "All ships, emergency power to engines," Kethmore commanded. "Move to avoid the debris field." But the Zephyrian vessels, for all their advanced technology, had not been designed to dodge mountain-sized rocks traveling at orbital velocity. Their energy-based point defense systems could handle missiles and small projectiles, but they were useless against chunks of stone the size of city blocks. The first impacts were devastating. A piece of lunar rock slammed into the cruiser Bright Star, punching completely through its crystalline hull and emerging from the other side in a spray of debris and atmosphere. The destroyer's swift wind tried to dodge a particularly large chunk, only to be struck by 3 smaller pieces that shattered its engine section. Admiral Kethmore watched in horror as his fleet was torn apart by simple rocks. Ships that had conquered star systems were being destroyed by the remnants of a mining operation. It was impossible, unthinkable, but it was happening before his eyes. "Sir, the human vessel," Yathara called out. On the main screen, the Indomitable drifted among the debris field, like a ghost ship. Her hull was split open in dozens of places. Her engines were dark and she showed no signs of life. But she had accomplished her mission. The debris field continued to spread, catching more Zephyrian ships in its deadly embrace. 15 more alien vessels were destroyed or critically damaged before the survivors could escape the expanding cloud of destruction. Admiral Kethmore found himself in command of only 20 ships, barely a third of the fleet he had brought to conquer this insignificant human colony. "Sir," the communications officer reported, "we're detecting massive human fleet movements throughout this sector. At least 40 ships converging on our position." Kethmore looked at the tactical display showing the approaching human vessels, mining ships with improvised weapons, cargo haulers bristling with missile pods, even passenger liners that had been hastily converted to warships. They were a ragtag collection that should have posed no threat to his remaining forces. But Kethmore had learned not to underestimate human ingenuity. These people had just destroyed 2/3 of his fleet using a mining operation and a dying ship. What else might they be capable of? "All ships prepare to withdraw from the system," he ordered. "Sir?" Yathara looked shocked. "We still outnumber them, do we?" Kethmore gestured at the spreading debris field where the Indomitable drifted silent and dark. "That single ship cost us 30 vessels and the element of surprise. How many more will we lose to their civilian fleet? How many to their actual military when it arrives?" The withdrawal was conducted in good order, but it felt like a retreat. As the surviving Zephyrian ships entered hyperspace, their sensors picked up the first human reinforcements entering the system. Mining vessels that looked like flying scrapyards, cargo ships that moved with the determination of warships, civilian craft that had somehow transformed themselves into instruments of war. 3 days later, Admiral Kethmore stood before the Zephyrian High Command to deliver his report. The crystalline chamber fell silent as he described the battle and its outcome. "The humans," he concluded, "are not what we expected. Their technology is primitive by our standards, but they use it in ways we never anticipated. They fight with a ferocity that borders on madness, and they refuse to surrender even when defeat is certain." High Commander Zathrel, eldest of the Zephyrian leadership, studied the battle reports with his ancient eyes. "You recommend against further action?" "I recommend extreme caution," Kethmore replied. "The humans we fought were from a single old ship with outdated weapons. Yet they nearly destroyed our entire fleet. If this is what their weakest vessels can do, what might their strongest be capable of?" The High Command voted unanimously to avoid human space indefinitely. The Zephyrian hegemony, which had conquered 17 star systems in a century of warfare, decided that humanity was not worth the cost of conquest. Meanwhile, in the Kepler system, human salvage crews worked around the clock to recover what they could from the Indomitable's wreckage. Captain Elena Vasquez was found alive in an emergency pod, along with 63 members of her crew. The old dreadnought had protected them even in death. The ship herself was beyond repair, but her sacrifice had saved 50,000 colonists and sent a message that echoed throughout the galaxy. Humanity was not to be trifled with. They built their ships to fight, their crews to endure, and their legends to inspire future generations. In the years that followed, every human child would learn the story of the Indomitable and her final battle. They would learn that sometimes the old ships fight the hardest, that courage matters more than technology, and that humans never surrender when they're protecting something precious. The aliens had expected an effortless victory. Instead, they learned why humanity had crawled up from a gravity well to claim the stars. Some lessons once learned are never forgotten. 3 weeks passed like a held breath across the galaxy. Ships from dozens of worlds gathered at the designated coordinates in neutral space. They came to witness what everyone believed would be a quick lesson in humility for the upstart humans. The observer fleet was impressive. Sleek Zephyrian cruisers hung like silver needles against the stars. Korthak battlespheres pulsed with internal energy. Nexari crystal ships caught and reflected light in impossible patterns. Every major species had sent their finest vessels to watch the show. Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominance and felt satisfaction wash over him. His flagship was a work of art as much as a weapon of war. 3 kilometers of biometallic hull that could repair itself during battle. Shields powered by contained miniature stars, weapons that could bend space and time to destroy enemies. Impressive turnout, commented his tactical officer. Half the galaxy wants to see this. Of course they do, Vextar replied. This will be remembered for generations, the day the humans learned their place. Through the viewing portal, he could see the observer ships arranging themselves at a safe distance. Betting pools had closed the night before. The longest estimate for human survival was 12 minutes. Most bets were on whether they would last 5. Sir, called his sensor operator. Human vessel approaching. Vextar turned his attention to the main display. A single ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel and took position opposite the Eternal Dominance. The human vessel looked exactly as primitive as expected. The ship was angular and blocky, built with straight lines and simple joints. Its hull was dull gray metal that showed no elegant curves or artistic flourishes. Weapon ports dotted its surface in strictly functional arrangements. Everything about it screamed basic engineering and limited imagination. That is their finest warship? Vextar laughed. It looks like something built in a scrapyard. His crew joined in the laughter. The human ship was less than half the size of the Eternal Dominance. Its weapons appeared to be simple projectile launchers. Its armor looked thick but primitive. There were no visible shield generators or exotic defensive systems. Open communications, Vextar ordered. Let us meet our opponents. The main screen switched to show the bridge of the human vessel. The captain was a woman with short brown hair and steady eyes. She wore a simple blue uniform with minimal decoration. Behind her, the human bridge looked functional but unremarkable. No flowing energy displays or crystal control interfaces. Just screens, buttons, and crew members in similar plain uniforms. I am Admiral Vextar of the Hegemony, he announced. You are addressing the commander of the Eternal Dominance flagship of the most powerful navy in this galaxy. Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Indomitable, the human replied. Her voice was calm and professional. Ready to begin when you are, Admiral. Vextar studied her face for signs of fear or uncertainty. He saw neither. The human woman looked as relaxed as if she were discussing the weather. Captain Chen, I will be honest with you. Your vessel appears modest compared to what we face in galactic warfare. Are you certain you wish to proceed? Quite certain, Admiral. We have studied your tactical doctrines extensively. This should be educational. Something in her tone made Vextar pause. There was no bravado in her voice, no desperate courage or noble defiance. She spoke like someone stating a simple fact. Very well, he said finally. The rules of engagement are simple. This is a combat demonstration, not a fight to the death. Surrender is acceptable when your vessel can no longer fight effectively. Do you understand? Understood. The same applies to you, Admiral. The comment sent murmurs through the bridge crew of the Eternal Dominance. Did this human seriously think she could force their surrender? Of course, Vextar replied with amusement. Begin when ready. The communication ended. Both ships moved to combat positions while the observer fleet watched from a distance. Commentators across the galaxy provided analysis for billions of viewers. The human ship shows no visible shield generators, noted one expert. They appear to be relying entirely on armor for protection. Primitive but not necessarily ineffective, added another. However, armor cannot stand against reality-warping weapons. Look at their weapons, a third commentator observed. Those appear to be magnetic accelerators for solid projectiles. Technology most species abandoned thousands of years ago. In the betting pools, odds shifted even further against the humans. Their ship looked like a museum piece compared to the gleaming perfection of the Eternal Dominance. Captain Chen ignored the commentary streams her communications officer was monitoring. She focused on the tactical display showing the Hegemony flagship. Her crew worked with quiet efficiency, making final preparations. All systems green, Captain, reported her tactical officer. Weapons loaded and ready. Shields? Chen asked, holding at full power. Stealth systems operational. The aliens would be confused by that last report. The human ship showed no evidence of stealth technology. But then, they would not recognize human innovations in that field. Engineering status report. All reactors operating normally. Armor systems fully charged. Repair drones standing by. Chen nodded. Everything was proceeding according to plan. The plan that had been developed over 20 years of studying galactic warfare. The plan that had identified critical weaknesses in alien military thinking. Admiral Vextar is hailing us. Reported communications. Put him through. The hegemony commander appeared on screen again. Captain Chen, my sensors show your vessel lacks several basic defensive systems. I offer you one final chance to withdraw with honor intact. Thank you for your concern, Admiral. We are confident in our preparations. Then may the best ship win. The channel closed. Both vessels began their final approach to combat range. The observer fleet held position, their sensors recording everything for later analysis. This would be studied in military academies across the galaxy. What none of them knew was that human military academies had been studying galactic warfare for decades. Every weakness, every tactical assumption, every technological limitation had been cataloged and analyzed. The Indomitable was not just a warship. It was the product of human military science applied to the problem of galactic conflict. Captain Chen looked at her crew. They were young men and women from Earth, trained in the hardest military traditions humanity had developed. They had prepared for this moment their entire careers. Attention all hands, she announced over the ship's communication system. Today we show the galaxy what Earth can do. Remember your training. Trust your equipment. And show them why humans do not back down. The crew acknowledged her words with quiet professionalism. No cheers or battle cries, just focused determination. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominance, Admiral Vextar gave his own speech to his crew. It was full of pride and tradition, reminding them of their superiority and the glory of their empire. The two ships closed to combat range. The galaxy watched, and Captain Chen smiled a small cold smile that would have chilled Admiral Vextar to the bone if he could have seen it. The demonstration was about to begin. The battle began exactly as Admiral Vextar had planned. The Eternal Dominance opened fire with weapons that had conquered star systems. Streams of antimatter lanced across space, followed by gravity bombs that could crush battleships into metal spheres. Reality warping beams twisted the fabric of space itself toward the human vessel. The observer fleet watched in fascination. These were weapons of legend, technologies that had taken millennia to perfect. The antimatter stream alone carried enough energy to power a small planet. The gravity bombs created temporary black holes that would tear apart any normal ship. The weapon struck the Indomitable dead center and accomplished absolutely nothing. The antimatter stream hit the human ship's hull and simply dissipated. The energy scattered, like water hitting a mountain. The gravity bombs exploded in brilliant flashes but left no mark on the dull gray armor. The reality warping beams bent around the ship as if it were not quite there. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominance, alarm bells began ringing. Sensors report no damage to the human vessel, his tactical officer announced with confusion in his voice. Impossible, Vextar snarled. Fire again. Full power this time. The second barrage was even more intense. Every weapon the Eternal Dominance possessed fired in perfect coordination. The space around the Indomitable became a storm of deadly energy. The observer ships had to adjust their positions to avoid the radiation spillover. When the light faded, the human ship hung unchanged in space. Not a single scorch mark showed on its hull. How? Whispered Vexitar's tactical officer. Captain Chen's voice came across the communication channel, calm and professional. Admiral Vextar, you have demonstrated your opening attack. Now observe what happens when humans go to war. The Indomitable moved. It did not accelerate slowly like other warships. It did not build up speed over time. One moment it was stationary, the next it was moving at combat velocity. The ship twisted through space with movements that seemed to defy physics. Impossible, breathed the sensor operator. No ship can maneuver like that. The human vessel's weapons began firing. What emerged was not exotic energy or reality-bending technology. Instead, the Indomitable launched what appeared to be simple metal projectiles. Solid chunks of refined materials accelerated to incredible speeds by magnetic fields. But these projectiles moved faster than anything the galaxy had ever seen. They struck the Eternal Dominance's shields at a significant percentage of light speed. The impact sent shockwaves through the massive alien vessel. Shields holding at 90%, reported the defensive systems operator. Vextar felt relieved for a moment. Then the second wave of projectiles arrived. These were different. Each one was slightly modified based on data from the first impact. They struck at precisely calculated angles, creating resonance patterns in the shield matrix. The Eternal Dominance's legendary defenses began to fluctuate. Shields down to 70% came the increasingly worried report. But the kinetic weapons were only the beginning. The Indomitable launched what humans called smart missiles, weapons that learned and adapted as they flew. These missiles analyzed the alien ship's defensive patterns and adjusted their approach accordingly. Vextar watched in growing horror as his point defense systems engaged the incoming missiles. His weapons destroyed dozens of them, but the surviving missiles shared data with each other, learning from each defensive action. They began to dodge and weave in patterns his computers could not predict. "Sir, the missiles are adapting faster than our targeting systems can compensate." The first wave of smart missiles struck the Eternal Dominance. Each one carried just enough explosive to damage but not destroy. They were not trying to win quickly. They were gathering information. Captain Chen's tactical display showed everything she needed to know. The alien ship's shield frequency, armor composition, weapon placement, and defensive patterns. All of it was being analyzed by computers that had been designed for one purpose: to fight and win wars. "Begin Phase 2, she ordered. The Indomitable's weapons changed their approach. Now they fired projectiles specifically designed to counter the Eternal Dominance's defenses. Each shot was calculated based on real-time analysis of the target's weaknesses. On the alien flagship, chaos was spreading. Shields down to 40%. Hull breaches on deck 7 through 12. Our armor is failing. How are they penetrating biometallic plating?" Vextar stared at his displays in disbelief. The human projectiles were not just breaking through his armor. They were doing it efficiently. Each shot struck at exactly the right angle with exactly the right force to cause maximum damage. "Return fire," he ordered desperately. The Eternal Dominance's weapons swiveled toward the human ship and fired again, but the Indomitable was no longer where it had been. The vessel moved through space like it was dancing, avoiding incoming fire with movements that seemed impossible. "How are they maneuvering like that?" demanded Vextar. His science officer checked her readings twice before answering. "Sir, they appear to be using controlled gravity fields, but the power requirements should be enormous." Captain Chen listened to her tactical officer's reports with satisfaction. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Planned galactic demonstration, developed by Earth's finest military minds specifically for this moment. "Enemy shield strength continuing to decline," reported her weapons officer. "Hull integrity at 68% and falling. Excellent. Begin targeting their weapon systems. Non-lethal precision strikes only." The Indomitable's fire became even more accurate. Human weapons began systematically dismantling the Eternal Dominance's offensive capabilities, not destroying them completely but damaging them just enough to render them useless. This was not random destruction. "This was surgery performed with kinetic weapons, sir," called out the communications officer on the alien bridge. "The humans are specifically targeting our weapons. They are not trying to destroy us." Vextar felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature on his bridge. The humans were not fighting to kill. They were fighting to demonstrate superiority. They were proving a point. "Damage report," he demanded. 60% of our weapon systems are offline. Shields down to 20%. Hull breaches on 15 decks. Engineering reports multiple system failures. The battle had been going for less than 20 minutes. In the observer fleet, absolute silence reigned. The galaxy's finest warship was being systematically dismantled by a vessel that looked like it had been built in a scrapyard. Every assumption about military technology was being proven wrong. "How are they doing this?" whispered one observer. "Their weapons are primitive," said another. "But their tactics, look at the precision," a third voice added. "Every shot is calculated. They are not wasting a single projectile." Captain Chen opened a communication channel to the alien flagship. "Admiral Vextar, your vessel has been neutralized. Do you wish to continue this demonstration?" Vextar looked around his bridge. Emergency lights flashed. Smoke filled the air. His crew worked frantically to keep basic systems online. His mighty warship had been reduced to a crippled hulk in less than half an hour. "How?" he asked simply. Chen's voice remained calm and professional. "Admiral, you developed your weapons to fight other galactic species. We developed ours to fight everything. Your tactics assume enemies who think like you do. We do not," the communication ended. The Indomitable held position, its weapons still trained on the Eternal Dominance but no longer firing. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the implications became clear. The humans had not just won. They had won effortlessly, and this was just one ship. Admiral Vextar refused to accept defeat. His pride, his empire's reputation, and 3,000 years of military tradition demanded he continue fighting. The Eternal Dominant still had weapons. His shields, though damaged, still functioned. He would not surrender to a primitive species. All remaining weapons concentrate fire on that human ship, he ordered. Full power. Everything we have. His crew obeyed, though doubt showed in their movements. The Eternal Dominance unleashed every functional weapon system it possessed. Particle beams, plasma cannons, and quantum disruptors fired in desperate coordination. The alien flagship threw everything it had at the Indomitable. Captain Chen watched the incoming fire with interest rather than concern. Her ship's computers had spent the last 20 minutes analyzing every aspect of hegemony weapons technology. Now they knew exactly how to counter it. Defensive Pattern 7, she ordered quietly. The Indomitable moved through the storm of alien fire like it was dancing, every shot missed by precisely calculated margins. The ship seemed to know where each beam would be before it fired. But this was not luck or superior reflexes. This was applied mathematics. Human computers had analyzed the firing patterns of every weapon on the Eternal Dominance. They could predict where each shot would go based on the alien ship's power flows and targeting systems. Impossible, breathed Vextar's tactical officer. They are dodging everything. They are not dodging, the science officer corrected with growing horror. They are predicting our fire. On the human bridge, the tactical display showed the complete breakdown of hegemony military doctrine. Every move the aliens made followed patterns that human strategists had identified years ago. Galactic warfare had become predictable, because every species thought in similar ways. Humans thought differently. Admiral Vextar is hailing us, reported the communications officer. Put him through, Chen replied. The alien commander's face showed frustration and confusion. How are you doing this? Our weapons cannot touch you. Our defenses cannot stop you. What technology are you using? Chen considered her answer carefully. The truth would be more devastating than any weapon. Admiral, you ask about technology, but this is not about technology. This is about thinking. Your species developed warfare against enemies who shared your assumptions. You fight according to rules that make sense to you. And humans do not follow rules. Humans make their own rules, Admiral. We do not fight to prove superiority or defend honor. We fight to win permanently. Every human military engagement is studied and analyzed. We learn from every battle, every mistake, every small advantage. Chen gestured to her tactical display. Your ship is a masterpiece of engineering. Your weapons are works of art. But you built them to fight other galactic species. We built our ship to fight you specifically. Vextar felt a chill as the implications became clear. You have been planning this? For 20 years, Admiral. Since first contact, we studied every aspect of galactic warfare. We identified weaknesses in your tactical thinking. We designed weapons and defenses specifically to counter your technologies. The truth was even more disturbing than Vextar realized. Human military analysts had not just studied alien tactics. They had run millions of computer simulations testing different scenarios and strategies. The Indomitable was not just a warship. It was the physical result of decades of scientific research into the art of war. Your turn, Admiral, Chen continued. Observe what human warfare looks like when we apply our full attention to the problem. The Indomitable began its next phase of attack. What happened next was not battle in any sense the galaxy understood. It was systematic dismantlement. The human ship did not just fight, it hunted with surgical precision. Each weapon system on the Eternal Dominance was targeted individually. Not to destroy, but to disable in the most efficient way possible. Human projectiles struck power conduits, severed control cables, and damaged targeting sensors. Every shot accomplished exactly what was intended. They are taking us apart piece by piece, reported Vextar's engineering officer. Sir, they know our ship better than we do, added the tactical officer. They are hitting components I did not know were vulnerable. The horrible truth was that humans had obtained detailed specifications of hegemony ship designs through careful intelligence gathering. Every weakness had been cataloged. Every potential failure point had been mapped, but the technology was only part of the story. The real difference was philosophical. Galactic species fought for glory, territory, or resources. They developed elaborate rules of engagement and concepts of honorable combat. War was seen as an extension of diplomacy or a test of cultural superiority. Humans saw war as a problem to be solved through applied science and engineering. They studied it like any other natural phenomenon. They developed theories, tested hypotheses, and refined their methods based on evidence. The result was the approach to combat that was both completely alien and devastatingly effective. "Admiral," Chen's voice came across the communication channel again. "Your remaining weapons are non-functional. Your shields are down to 5%. Your propulsion is offline. Do you wish to continue?" Vextar looked around his bridge. His flagship, pride of the hegemony fleet, was now a drifting hulk. Emergency power kept life support running. His crew worked frantically to prevent complete system failure. "What do you want from us?" he asked quietly. "Nothing, Admiral. This was a demonstration as requested. We have demonstrated that human technology and tactics are effective against galactic military forces." Chen paused, letting the implications sink in. "However, I should mention something that might interest you. The Indomitable is not our most advanced warship. It is not our largest or most heavily armed. It was chosen for this demonstration because it represents the minimum level of capability we consider adequate for galactic operations." The silence that followed her words was deafening. In the observer fleet, panic was beginning to spread. If this was the minimum human capability, what did their maximum look like? How many ships did Earth possess? What other technologies had they developed? "Captain Chen," Vextar said finally, "I formally surrender. You have proven your point." "Surrender accepted, Admiral. Prepare to receive rescue ships for your crew." But Vextar had one more question. "Why did you not destroy us? You could have easily." Chen's expression softened slightly. "Admiral, humans learned long ago that the goal of warfare is not destruction. It is achieving your objectives with minimum necessary force. Our objective was to demonstrate capability. Destroying your ship would have served no purpose." She paused again. "Besides, we would prefer the galaxy to see us as potential allies rather than inevitable enemies. This demonstration was meant to show what we can do when challenged. We hope it will also show that we are reasonable people who prefer cooperation to conflict." The communication ended. Around the galaxy, billions of viewers tried to process what they had witnessed. The established order had just crumbled in 47 minutes. A species they had dismissed as primitive had proven not only their technological equality, but their tactical superiority. The age of galactic peace was ending. The age of human participation in galactic affairs had begun, and everyone knew that nothing would ever be the same. The rescue operation began immediately. Human shuttles launched from the Indomitable, their sleek forms cutting through space toward the crippled Eternal Dominance. Captain Chen had promised to evacuate the alien crew, and humans kept their promises. Admiral Vextar watched through his damaged viewports as the human rescue ships approached. They moved with the same precise efficiency their warship had shown in battle. No wasted motion, no unnecessary delay. These people treated everything like a military operation. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "the human shuttles are requesting permission to dock." "Granted," Vextar replied. What choice did he have? The first human boarding party was led by a young officer who introduced herself as Lieutenant Martinez. She was polite but professional as she coordinated the evacuation of wounded crew members. Her people worked with quiet competence, using medical equipment that seemed surprisingly advanced. "How many injured?" Martinez asked. 47 crew. Members require immediate medical attention, Vextar replied. Another 100 have minor injuries. We can handle that. Our medical bay is equipped for multi-species treatment. Vextar studied the human officer. She was young, probably the equivalent of 30 in galactic standard years, yet she moved and spoke with absolute confidence. These humans trained their people well. Lieutenant, may I ask a question? Of course, Admiral. How long have your people been preparing for this day? Martinez paused in her work. Which day, sir? The day we met other species? Or the day we proved we belonged among them? The day you demonstrated that we do not rule this galaxy as completely as we believed. The human woman smiled. It was not cruel or mocking. It was almost sad. Admiral, we have been preparing for war since before we left our home planet. It is what we do. It is what we have always done. Within hours, The evacuation was complete. The crew of the Eternal Dominance found themselves aboard human medical ships that had arrived from Earth. The aliens were treated with care and respect, their injuries tended by doctors who seemed to understand anatomy from dozens of different species. But it was the humans themselves who fascinated the alien observers. These people were calm, efficient, and completely professional. They had just won a crushing victory against the galaxy's most powerful warship. Yet they showed no arrogance or celebration. Captain Chen transmitted her final report to the Galactic Council while rescue operations continued. Council members, the demonstration is complete. The UES Indomitable successfully engaged and neutralized the hegemony flagship Eternal Dominance in 47 minutes of combat. No fatalities occurred on either side. We await your decision regarding Earth's membership application. The transmission ended. Around the galaxy, the Council representatives tried to process what they had witnessed. In the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, emergency sessions began immediately. Representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered to discuss the implications of what they had seen. The debates were heated, confused, and often contradictory. "This changes everything," declared High Curator Nesh of the Zephyrian Collective. "If humans can defeat our finest warship so easily, what does that say about our military capabilities?" "It says we have been fighting the wrong kinds of wars," replied Commander Zilf of the Korthak Empire. Her crystalline form sparkled with agitation. "They approach this like scientists studying a problem." "But they are primitives," protested another representative. "They only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. Apparently they used those 50 years more effectively than—" "We used the last 3,000, Zilf responded coldly. The Nexari representative chimed her thoughts. "Our combat predictions saw only a small chance of human victory. We did not account for tactics completely outside our experience." Ambassador Chen, the human diplomat, sat quietly through the debates. She had returned to the council chambers after receiving Captain Chen's report. The aliens argued and theorized around her, but she knew the truth was simpler than they wanted to admit. Humans were different. Not better or worse, just different. They had evolved on a world that tried to kill them in every possible way. They had survived by learning to turn every challenge into an advantage. When they discovered they were not alone in the universe, they had approached that challenge the same way. "The question before us," announced the council speaker, "is simple. Do we accept Earth's application for membership?" The vote was held immediately. It was unanimous. But the real reason for the unanimous vote had nothing to do with respect or admiration. It was fear. Fear of what might happen if they rejected humanity. Fear of what other capabilities humans might possess. Fear of the unknown potential that Earth represented. Ambassador Chen, the speaker announced, by unanimous vote of the Galactic Council, Earth is granted full membership and all associated rights and privileges. Chen stood and bowed formally. "On behalf of Earth and humanity, I accept this honor. We look forward to peaceful cooperation with all council members." But as she spoke, every representative in the chamber was thinking the same thing. Everything had changed. Within days, the footage of the battle spread throughout the galaxy. Military analysts studied every frame, trying to understand how the humans had achieved such a complete victory. Their conclusions were disturbing. Human weapons were not exotic or mysterious. They were simply better engineered. Human tactics were not revolutionary. They were just more thoroughly researched. Human technology was not more advanced. It was more precisely applied. The difference was approach. Humans had studied galactic warfare like any other science. They had identified problems and developed solutions. They had tested their theories and refined their methods. They had built their military around the principle of absolute efficiency. "They fight like machines," one analyst reported. "But machines, programmed by beings who understand war better than we do." The implications were staggering. If humans could engineer their way to military superiority in 50 years, what could they accomplish given time? What other areas of technology had they approached with the same methodical precision? Military shipyards across the galaxy began retrofitting their fleets. New weapons were designed. New tactics were developed. Everyone wanted to close the gap before they learned what human warfare looked like when the restraints came off. But some species drew different conclusions. The more thoughtful governments realized that humans had demonstrated restraint as much as capability. They had shown they could win without destroying their enemies. They had proven their point without unnecessary casualties. Perhaps these humans could be allies rather than conquerors. On Earth, Captain Chen submitted her detailed after-action report to Fleet Command. The demonstration had accomplished its objectives. The galaxy now understood that humanity was not to be dismissed or underestimated. Mission successful, she wrote in her final summary. Recommend we proceed to Phase 2 of the integration plan. Admiral Morrison read the report with satisfaction. Phase 1 had been about proving human capability. Phase 2 would be about proving human character. The galaxy needed to learn that Earth could be trusted with power. But first, they needed to understand that this had only been a demonstration. The Indomitable was indeed one of humanity's less advanced warships. The real weapons, the ships designed for actual warfare rather than diplomatic demonstrations, remained safely in Earth's shipyards. The galaxy would learn about those when and if they became necessary. For now, humanity had earned its place among the stars. The age of galactic peace was ending, but perhaps something better could take its place. An age where problems were solved through human-style thinking, methodical, scientific, and absolutely determined to find the right answer. The stars themselves seemed different now. They belonged to a galaxy where humans lived and nothing would ever be quite the same.